Welcome back, fellow jazz bums. Today we are kicking off our interview series. We are going to aim to have one interview per month going forward. Before we get into it, remember to like and subscribe. We also started a Jazz Bums Discord, so we'll drop the invite in the description below if you'd like to join. And we also live stream every Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific. So come to the channel and come hang out. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Felipe to get us started.
Thank you, Mike. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, Joe. So today, starting a new series, we have here Joe Harley, also known as the Tone Poet. Originally from Lincoln, Nebraska, has become a reference in audiophile releases, especially in jazz and the Blue Note catalog. Besides his work as a VP for AudioQuest, he's also highly regarded for his work as a producer for many labels, such as AudioQuest Music, Telarc, Enya, ECM, Groovy Note, and a creative director at the JVC SRCD series. He has worked with artists such as Charles Lloyd, Benny Wallace, Diana Krall, Brad Mehldau, Grover Washington Jr., and Ry Cooder. And after his successful Music Matter Jazz project with Ron Rambach and Kevin Gray, he joined Blue Note, and currently he directs, curates the Tone Poet series, and of course is a music lover, passionate about it as all we are. So Joe, thank you so much for coming. Welcome to the channel. Welcome.
Thank you, Felipe. Great to be here, and thanks, guys. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you.
So we sent some questions over, and we kind of have them broken up into two categories. Like first, we kind of want to talk about like your role at Blue Note and that sort of thing, and then we really want to get into your life as a jazz listener and record collector. So to start us off, as the namesake of the Tone Poet series, how do you feel about your name being so closely connected with the label's continued legacy? We just feel like you're, at least for us record nerds, you're the face of the whole label and you know, for issues and just everything.
Well, there is this guy, Don Was. I would say he's the face of the label, but yeah.
Yeah. So so if I could just jump in, having access to, actually, I guess the first question is, as part of UME, do you essentially have access to all of their vaults? I know that you put out multiple labels as Tone Poets, like Pacific Jazz, United Artists Jazz. There's rumors that there's a transition title in there somewhere, as well as Solid State. There was that great Chick Corea record.
Korea.
So I guess the question we have, and we've kind of like thought about this out loud on our live streams before, but you know, having access to all of that, how do you approach deciding what titles you want to put out?
It's a good question. You know, I do it the old-fashioned way. Well, first of all, I'm a list maker and always have been. So I've got these running lists of titles I've wanted to deal with for years, and this includes going back to Music Matters days. It's a big list, and it gets bigger all the time. So I basically, you know, I look at those. I'll go pull from my racks those records, kind of refresh myself a little bit, and then it's really down to, does it speak to me? Does a particular title, you know, really, is it important to me? Does it speak to me musically? And are there any obvious sonic issues that would be disqualifying? Now, you know, we're talking about an era that almost everything was done live to 2-track or live to mono, meaning there is no mix. There's no mixtape, and then you finesse it all. This was, in the case of Blue Note and Pacific Jazz and all the labels really in the 50s and up to late 60s. When it comes to jazz, those were like mixed on the fly. So there's always something, always. You know, it's even records that we might hold up as the pinnacle of audio perfection in some way, there's always something, which doesn't bother me a bit.
Yeah.
Unless it's really like so overt that it's hugely distracting. But there's all kinds of stuff. Sometimes people pick up on it, sometimes they don't. When I listen to these, I'll notice it when we put the masters up, because you hear everything.
Mm-hmm.
And, you'll hear, it's a little hot right there. Up there's Rudy backing it off. You can hear, like, we Kevin and I sometimes, involuntarily we're reaching for some imaginary pot. and you're turning your air pot, and there's Rudy turning the real pot down.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when he does that, is that a reaction to what's going on in the room? So will he do that just for a few seconds and then put it back up?
No, entirely depends on what's going on. It could be somebody is too close to a mic, and you're not necessarily, if the take's really great, you're not necessarily going to stop it and go, hey, Lee Morgan, can you step back, 6 inches from the mic, and let's do this again? You wouldn't do that. I mean, unless it's like gross distortion and the take's ruined or something. Mm-hmm. But for a little overload, and understand that at that time, the headroom on tape was significantly less than we have now. So, knowing all these things, there's Rudy with his Scotch 111 tape with just like pretty narrow headroom. Mm-hmm. And he's got to live in that zone. And, not, he wasn't heavy-handed in those days with a compressor, but he's got to keep dynamics and try to stay above tape hiss level. And he liked to hit the tape hot. Some people in those eras didn't, but he did. He liked to hit the tape hot, keep himself out of tape hiss range. And when you do that, things happen. Maybe Art Blakey comes in and goes bam on the right cymbal, and so it's a little hot. It's a little much. And then Rudy makes the adjustment so that, yes, every time you play it, you'll hear that, hot spot when someone is a little loud, but you'll hear him make the adjustments. To me, it doesn't bother me at all, because that's what happened. That's the history of the music. That day in the studio, that's what went down. And you basically admire all those guys, Roy Dunan and Rudy and Richard Bach at Pacific. All these guys didn't have the luxury of sitting there later and saying, hey, so-and-so come in and overdub this part because you missed a note. Doesn't happen with 2-track. There's no, what you recorded is what you got. You can do another take.
Yeah.
You can do that, and you can do some editing, but you can't do punch-ins of any kind.
And doesn't that add to the fidelity of the overall recording, because it's basically recorded directly without any of that going on?
Yeah, without a doubt. You're eliminating a whole pile of electronics when you record that way.
Yeah.
It puts a lot more pressure on the engineer, and we sometimes say, those guys were like, the 5th or 6th member of the band, because they had to be right in there, have an awareness of who's soloing, what the basic arrangement is, and respond accordingly. Mm-hmm. And when you really think about it, when you listen to those records and think that there's, in those days, he didn't really have an assistant. I'm speaking of, of Rudy primarily, but most of these people didn't have assistants like we do now. You'd have the producer, presumably Alfred or Richard Bach or whoever it might be, sort of paid attention to the arrangement and had some sort of who's going to solo when. I mean, when I do live 2-track sessions, that's how I do it. I watch and you cue the engineer trumpet solo 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then they're ready to make some moves. I don't know if Rudy had that. He might have just been, and you can't be staring out the glass the whole time because you got to watch what's going. So he's got to react. If no one's telling him, he's reacting in real time to what he's hearing, and it's pretty amazing.
That's amazing to hear. Yeah. So speaking of recording, engineer, producer, can you tell us a little bit more about your recent collaborations with Charles Lloyd, how this work in the studio works, and the project that's coming out, and even like other labels that you work besides Blue Note, right? I think you mentioned you worked with Gart recently. Also, so how is the process? What have you been doing besides Stone Poet?
Well, so you're referring to the Charles Lloyd studio session that we just did?
Yeah.
Boy, me and my big mouth. I must have said something somewhere. But no, it was really fun. This was just in March. It was really recently. And great band. I mean, just killer band. It was Charles, Jason Moran, brilliant pianist. Brian Blade, musician on drums. Larry Grenadier on bass. Best of the best. And we were in there for 4 days at a studio in Santa Barbara, Santa Barbara Sound. And then there was a concert on the 5th evening with that band in honor of Charles' 85th birthday.
Wow.
That was in LA, that concert?
That particular one was in Santa Barbara.
Okay.
And then they went to La Jolla, and then there was ongoing series of concerts after that, incorporating other musicians as well.
So you serve as like the producer in those kind of sessions? Like, how is that different than, I guess, working with Kevin to re-record these records?
Oh, it's totally different. I mean, these are, you're working with living musicians, and so it's very different. You're in the creative process. So Charles' wife, Dorothy Darr, is the producer. They've listed me as tone poet going way back. We started working together 1999, I think, when he was with ECM. We started with a record called The Water is Wide, and those sessions actually yielded 2 albums, Water is Wide and Hyperion for Higgins. And the band was Charles with Brad Meldau, John Abercrombie, Larry Grenadier. We were just talking at this session. We hadn't seen each other in 20 years.
Wow.
And Billy Higgins. And boy, what a thrill to work with Billy. His health was a little sketchy, but when he got on the drums, it was incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't like, oh, Billy's, not feeling great, and so it's nice that he's here. But no. If you listen to those records, he's top of his game. And that's how we started. And then went from there.
That's very interesting. I love Billy Higgins, especially like all the stuff that him and Cedar Walton played on together over the years. I just want to get all that stuff,
Yeah.
Like it has those 2 guys. I don't really care who else is on the record. There's just something magical about those 2 guys work together.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, he's hearing him on these masters, on the originals, which I've got, you guys can't see it, but there's records like there's one wall and they're all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes on the OGs, it's a little harder to pick up what he's doing, a little harder to pick up some of the details. So when we put up the masters, it's like, man, he's right there.
Yeah.
And you can hear and the more you hear, the more impressed you are.
You know, real quick, one interesting thing I think with the tone poets and the drums specifically is you can like hear the mechanism of the hi-hat sometimes, like just kind of tweaking up and down, right? Like it's amazing how much detail's coming through on these records.
Yeah, sometimes the drummer needed to put some 3-in-1 on the hat pedal, because I've heard that at times.
But you can actually hear that kind of detail, and I try to put myself like in the room, especially at Rudy's, his little house studio, and it's just amazing what those guys were able to capture, and the stuff that y'all are, reissuing is our favorite stuff, really.
It's really fun. So getting back to, you asked about process. It's just, every day, I don't listen to that much. Listen to classical in the morning when I'm doing some emails, getting caffeinated. But I don't really start listening to titles until maybe 4 o'clock, because I don't want to be distracted.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, music isn't background for me, it's primary. And so I just start playing them. I just start pulling titles. Sometimes I'll think, oh, this is going to be great, and I pull it out and like, gotta come back to that. Maybe that's not quite what I remembered.
Yeah.
And then there's other ones that it's been a while and I put them on, and it's like, God, why didn't I? You should have done this, in 2007. Why did we, and there's so many titles. It's really endless.
I know you've spoken about this before, but when there's multiple tapes for a mono and a stereo copy, I know that like Music Matters and Tone Poet generally prefer to put out the stereo.
It depends.
Okay, so I was just going to ask, like, will you take out both tapes and listen to them and kind of make a decision?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And
I'm talking about, in the case of Rudy, a very short period of time. It's about 1.5 years.
Okay.
That he was doing that, because it's a huge pain in the ass, especially again, Rudy, one-man band basically, and doing that, he just created twice the work.
Yeah,
because you've got to edit both and make sure the edits are exactly the same, and you're dealing with different technical issues with both. And I'm quite sure that's why at a certain point he just went, nope, I'm going to record everything stereo. And that's why those tapes all have that note. Mo Master made 50-50 from stereo. They all have that.
I noticed that sometimes they would put monos out. Like I think the Sonny Rollins Volume 2, the stereo came out years later.
Yeah.
And also I noticed that the Sonny Clark Trio, the one that's coming out as a Tone Poet.
Yeah.
I believe in the video you shared that was a mono box, but I also saw that I think it came out as stereo in Japan later. So I was wondering, was there a stereo and mono for that Sonny Clark? And is it coming out as a mono? Is that right?
It's coming out as a stereo.
Oh, it is. Oh, right. Okay.
I think when you hear it, you'll know why.
Oh,
I went in with the idea that we were going to for sure do mono.
Okay.
And but as always, when we're dealing with a title from that period, we put them both up. And this was at a time when Rudy was kind of experimenting with what he was doing with stereo. And you'll hear that it's not, what he eventually came to was, if it was a quintet, putting a trumpet, far left and a sax far left. This is really, I call it like big mono. It's when you hit your mono button, you'll hear it kind of collapses a little bit, which tells you, oh, this is stereo, but it's not overt stereo, if you know what I mean. It's not hard pan stereo. And also at Hackensack, the room is not very big. And so everything's bleeding into everything. So, it's not really, you don't have to worry about extreme separation or that sort of thing, where there's a big hole in the middle. Nothing like that. Nothing like that.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So it depends. You'll be seeing some more monos coming just because of the time period when they were done. You're going to see some Pacific monos. We've done some, obviously. You'll see some more, and of some Blue Note monos as well from that era.
Take the opportunity. Have you? Do you have this Clifford Brown on Pacific Jazz with Zoot Sims?
I do.
This is. I was just listening to this today. This is really good.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, so
yeah, it might be on a list of mine.
So it may come out in the next 10 years at some point.
One never knows.
Yeah, that's awesome. Very cool. All right. Next question. So, in your opinion, where is the vinyl record market headed? So the question really is about, we've noticed a change in the last year of availability has gone, what seems like it's gone way up, compared to the pandemic years. Yep. Are y'all seeing softening in the in the amount of records people are purchasing, or just can you talk about that a little bit?
No, we're not seeing that. I know in certain areas, I was talking with someone the other day, big ticket audio stuff. There is some softening there for sure. People aren't stuck at home, and or they went out and bought a bunch of stuff during pandemic, and they've already got it. So there is some softening in that world. By the way, you mentioned AudioQuest. I left there in March of 2020. I'm buddies with everybody, love the company, but I left there in March, and that's when things really went full tilt at Blue Note, and there just wasn't. I mean, I wanted to do it, but there wasn't. You couldn't do both things. There's no way. There was too time consuming.
I bet.
But anyway, so yeah, in software. Now you may see this. I don't know. We don't put out those $150 records.
Right.
There may be some softening there. I personally don't know, but in the realm that we live in, really haven't seen that, because it's a different. If people are watching their budgets a little more, it's probably going to be more related to big ticket stuff. And when you're talking about $40 and under, most people will still treat themselves to, it's not a wild extravagance in general. Maybe some people it would be, but it's not just being crazy to give yourself something you want for 40 or under. That's what I think's going on. And then as to availability, I'm sure you guys have heard, lots of plants have invested heavily in new equipment, added capacity. Virtually, you're seeing this everywhere, where plants are adding capacity to meet demand. So that's affected us too, even though not everyone. We press at RTI. Love the results we get, but it's helped in that people that might have gone there with a colored vinyl project or something that's not necessarily, aiming for the same audience we are. Now they might go somewhere else because they just want to get the job done. And so that's opened up a little room at RTI as well.
The other thing that's kind of interesting to us is we're noticing that a lot of the big labels are taking this back in house. Like, I mean, Blue Note did that with you and the classic series, and now we're seeing Kraft coming out with this kind of reboot of the original Jazz Classic series.
Yep.
One thing that we talked about.
What do they say about imitation?
Yeah, exactly.
No, I'm thrilled, honestly. I am, because
Yeah.
I love all those labels, and more good records is great for everybody. And speaking selfishly, hey, it's not like I need more records, but you know how it is, guys. It's like, do we all need more records? And yet we still buy them.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Just ask my wife.
Yeah, mine too, for sure. It's a drain on the wallet, but the nice thing with like that new series is coming up, the stuff you put out. I feel like when we buy these, we don't have to buy a copy ever again.
Well, that when we launched it, that was really in my thinking that we want to do the definitive edition. It's a good question. I'm glad you brought it up for a couple of reasons, but wanted to do the definitive edition of whatever that title was. Some people assume it's all about fidelity and making audiophile demo records or something. It isn't. The goal is it could be a title that's got some. I mean, we put out an Art Blakey record where Art Blakey and Rudy were always at war with each other. Rudy wanted him to play softer, and Art would go back and play louder. You can hear this on the tapes, and so I put it out knowing that there's times where Art's just overloading the mics. However, it's the best you're going to hear that. That session, is going to be, in my opinion, unbiased, better sounding than you've ever heard it, given what it is. So that's how we approach it.
So just jumping back to kind of other labels. This is a hypothetical, and the question is, if you were unable to partner with Blue Note and have access to their catalog, would there be another jazz catalog that you would feel passionate about and think, maybe someone else isn't doing it, that you would want to be the steward of? And it could be from 50s, 60s, 70s, or later. Do you think that there's a catalog that needs attention that is not getting it, or just one that you would love to?
Given that you have full access to anything, what would you like to pick?
Live another 50 years. But there's all kind. One that, because you guys had asked about stuff from the 70s and 80s, one catalog that's very interesting to me is Strata East. They've got some great titles. There's a Live at Slugs, the group Charles Tolliver. Strata East, for those who don't know, is a label that Charles Tolliver and Stanley Cowell, the great pianist, started. And so there's 2 volumes of that, and there's a wonderful Clifford Jordan album.
Oh yeah, Glass Bead Games.
Glass Bead Games. That's one of the, I think, just essential records. That one from Slugs is near and dear to me because Slugs was my home away from home in the later 70s, and that band played there all the time. And when you hear that record, boy, it takes you right back. I mean, it's like a time machine back to what you heard when you went there, complete with the piano that they never seemed to be able to hire the tuner or at least if they did, I went there hundreds of times. I never seemed to catch it when the piano had been tuned. So my guess is that they just didn't bother. But still, it's phenomenal. So that's one. There's all kinds of, I love stuff that comes out on ECM, and they have their new program.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about that. Yeah, it's all kinds of great stuff.
Awesome.
Yeah,
that's great, Joe. So now catching this hook, that's going to be our natural flow now. But you just use the word time machine. So let's go back in time. What brought you to New York from Nebraska? How did you end up there, and how did you become involved in this local jazz scene? How was the start for you?
I was in school at University of Nebraska. Actually, the summer of my senior year in high school. I was in Milwaukee by that time. My father was transferred for his company to New Jersey, and we lived in West New York, New Jersey, which is right across the Hudson from the city. So Lincoln Tunnel's right there, and
from Lincoln to Lincoln.
Yeah, and so I was just in heaven. I mean, I would go over to the city every day and hang, and Slugs was kind of my main hang. I saw all kinds of stuff there.
What neighborhood was Slugs in?
Lower East Side.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Lower East Side. Now I read about it, and every article about Slugs talks about how dangerous it was.
Yeah,
and like every,
I was actually going to ask, like, how was the neighborhood back then?
I was naive, and plus I knew some of the musicians, and I was there so often. I knew the staff. I didn't have any awareness. I knew we all weren't little angels there. Don't get me wrong. I mean, we were all doing what we were doing. I'm sure I was smoking my share of pot, and probably taking acid at some points or another. I mean, that was the scene. But I never felt like I was in danger or anything ever. My girlfriend at the time was a waitress there, and yeah, it just felt like home away from home to me.
Now, would they play 2 sets, and would you stay for like the whole night, or would you just catch a set and then go out somewhere else?
Not that I recall. I usually was there for the duration, and no, they would play. If I recall right, I believe it was 3 sets on weeknights and 4 sets on Friday and Saturday, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow.
And so, yeah, I'd generally be there for the duration.
That's awesome.
At the same time, I was I was hitting all those clubs. Vanguard costs more, so that was a bigger ticket. If you heard what it was now, it'd probably be embarrassing. Maybe it was $5, where Slugs was $2, or I don't, but it was. I had to be a little more judicious going to the Vanguard, because drinks were a little more expensive. Cover was a little more expensive, but I was going to Fillmore East at times. I saw all of Miles at the Fillmore. I went to that all of those nights, actually.
Oh wow!
And because I'm a huge Miles Davis fan and am to this day. But mostly it was rock over there, and I had this feeling that they played whatever they did. They probably did something very similar the night before and the night before that, where I could go and it'd be an hour or something that they'd be on. I could go to Slugs, and it definitely wasn't what they played the night before or the night before that. Everything was, and God, I remember seeing a McCoy Tyner, a band that he brought in with Sonny Fortune and Woody Shaw and this amazing drummer, Eric Gravatt, who kind of fell off the scene. And I mean, it was like the roof blew off of that place. It was some of the most intense musical experiences I've ever had. And that's when I kind of stopped realizing, you're not going to get what you want over at the Fillmore. What you want, you're going to get in these places. Yeah. And so I stopped going to the Fillmore, unless Miles played. That was different.
Now, would the sets be different? Like if you watch 2 or 3 sets, would they have different like tunes in the different?
Oh, sure.
Tonight, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, depending on who was playing, a set might be one tune that lasted for 50 minutes, and would just take you out of your seat. It just depended on who was playing. But yeah, so gosh, you name it, Ornette Coleman and so many people, including Tolliver and his band. But yeah, everybody played there. It's great time. Tony Williams' Lifetime. Remember, my ears rang for the next day after that. But it was very exciting.
So I think the next question we have here, we're all excited for you to answer. Essentially, Chris, Felipe, and I, fell in love with jazz, listening to like Blue Notes and 50s and 60s stuff. And we're now progressing into later 70s, 80s, and even today. But we wanted to ask if you could share some of your favorite labels. You mentioned Strata East already from this era, and then if you could show some records.
Well, you guys had asked me that last night. I started pulling some records, and I finally stopped because I realized, wait a minute, you will be here for hours.
Sounds good.
So I pulled a little pile, and that's as much as I did. But so two that I bring them up together because they go together really. These are 2 records on Steeplechase.
Okay.
And they're both by Archie Shepp and Horace Parlan. And so they're just duets. But and I assume everybody's, I mean, these are like, if you don't, you got to have these in your collect. I mean, these are just nonstop brilliance. Like, if you don't have them, you should have them. However, you need to find them. Anyway, so one is based on blues, and the other is based on spirituals. And the one that's a little more blues based is called Trouble in Mind. And let's see, there we go. Looks like that. And the one that's more spirituals based is called Going Home.
Yeah.
And these are like, everybody needs these. In my, or maybe everyone has them already. It wouldn't surprise me, because they should, but they do belong in any collection, because they're kind of unique. Performances are just breathtaking. Both these guys are in top form, and when I started looking at the wall, I was like, oh, I got to grab those. Even if everyone has it already, it doesn't hurt to talk about.
I've streamed the Archie Shepp Going Home.
Yeah,
and it's the style of it surprised me, because from what I remember, it was very like soft and beautiful. It wasn't like a out there Archie Shepp style record that
Yeah.
I'm used to. So it was different.
Yeah. These are very intimate records, and in fact, I played both of them last night because I pulled them out and I was looking at them, and I had meant to do some work with some test pressings, but I just couldn't resist and played them both, start to finish.
Fantastic.
And,
That's awesome start.
glad I did.
I've never heard those records, so that's exciting. You know, another interesting thing is we're all pretty new to jazz. I mean, I've been listening to jazz since the pandemic started. Like the first record I got was Bass on Top. I just saw One Poet and I bought it and I was hooked instantly because it was just such a beautiful record. So we're kind of coming from this newbie-ish phase of collecting and listening to the music, and it feels like we started at the right time.
Yeah. There's no bad time to start with this music, but yeah, you starting in pandemic, why not?
I was just going to say, I recently picked up a Steeplechase. I only have like 2 or 3, but it's this Walter Davis Jr. trio.
Oh, it's a great record.
Oh, fantastic.
Really great record.
Really love it.
Has the one with
Peterson.
Gabriano?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really, really good. So really happy to pick that up.
Awesome. Yeah, good choice. I mean, there's so many. Another one that we have a Herbie Nichols trio album coming, and this is actually a tribute to Herbie Nichols. This is on Soul Note, and it's Michel Mecklenburg, Steve Lacy, George Lewis, Harjan Gorder, and Han Binnick, the great Dutch drummer. And this is, let's see, I'm not holding this up right. There we go. Change of Season. And so it's all Herbie Nichols tunes, and it's from 1984, and it's brilliant.
Yeah.
These guys just worshipped. I forgot George Lewis is on there too, the great trombone player. These guys just worshipped the music, and Herbie was having a real renaissance in his life. It's a sad story. I mean, here's this guy that is just brilliant, like brilliant. I mean, it's no wonder Alfred was snagged him, and they couldn't give those records away. You know, he did 3 records for Blue Note, couldn't give them away at the time. But you listen to it, and he's as unique a composer and player as Monk, in my opinion, and many people's opinion. So the resurgence happened long after he passed, and he had a big family, and spent most of his life playing in a Dixieland band, if you can believe that, to make money, feed his family. And so, he had this music inside him, and the only time he could get it out was these recordings for Alfred. And so there was a number of Herbie tribute records, but this one is really special. Highly recommend it. I don't know, do you guys have it?
No. I'm just getting into Soul Note. I mentioned before the stream on Mazzy's interview you had. This just came in today. It's just coincidence, but this is the Etudes.
Yeah.
This is on Soul Note, and then I also picked up another one. This one as well. This is Frank Lowe.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
This is really good as well. So I'm just getting in, so I'll definitely be checking out that one.
Absolutely.
Cool.
We loved the classic series of the 2 10 inches they put.
Yeah.
That was great.
Yeah.
That was good.
So Jim Kurzman, who runs that, we both felt like between him putting out those and mine putting out the trio album, that we've done our service. That we've made sure that Herbie's music is living again and available again. And it's something that's really important to both of us.
So do y'all collaborate on that sort of thing often, like
Sure.
like releasing stuff kind of together? Because I think we've noticed like some of the classic series stuff and the Tone Poets kind of being related to each other at times when they're coming out.
Yeah, we talk all the time. I'm not going to say it almost every night. We are, he'll get my test pressings, I'll get his, and we get excited and we're like, oh my God, and then, yeah, we commiserate on future titles. He's great. He's always like, if you want it, go do it. But I try not to. If he's got his heart set on one, I try not to step on it.
Yeah. He's putting out Spring, Tony Williams, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is the other title Lifetime? Is that
already
planned?
mastered?
Is that going to be a Tone Poet? The Lifetime?
Yes, already mastered.
And will they both be put out like the same month? Is that like?
No. Well, I don't think. No, I think Spring's going to come first, and then you'll get Lifetime.
Those are really exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, for real.
That's great to hear. You guys are into that because it's a little more stretchy.
Yeah.
And but I love it. And Rudy, just man, those tapes when you put them up, he was having an amazing day in the studio on both occasions. I mean, it's great. Yeah. You want me to keep showing?
Yes, please.
This is an ECM, but this is one I pull frequently just for pleasure, just because it always puts me in a good mood, and the playing is so amazing. It's a Pat Metheny record called Reissuing, and it's just trio with Pat Metheny, Charlie Hayden, and Billy Higgins.
Wow.
And they're all, oh yeah, you can see Reissuing there in tiny print in the middle. And they're all just top of their game. I mean, these guys worshiped each other. They were so tight, and it's phenomenal. They do a version of Lonely Woman, the Horace Silver track, not Ornette. Although it's funny, they do Lonely Woman by Horace Silver, and then it's followed by 3 Ornette tunes. Here's Inside, Humpty Dumpty, and Reissuing is a track, and then there's a Charlie Hayden one called Blues for Pat. But if you don't already have it, you should get it. Maybe it'll show up in their new series. I don't know. That would be nice.
That would be awesome.
That would be awesome. And, oh yeah, the new ECM series.
Yeah,
would be interesting for sure. I haven't really dug into ECM stuff yet. I've got a couple of them, but
that's one to definitely check out.
I have a Dewey Redman on ECM. That's really excellent.
Which one?
The Dewey Redman.
Oh yeah. Old New Dreams, or
no, not that. It's
yeah, he did a few for ECM.
It'll take me forever to find it.
Yeah, those are good. Those are really good. This is a little change of pace, but this is another one I play just because you talk about a time machine. Like, you're in the club, and these two geniuses are just delivering the goods. So this is by Ron Carter and Jim Hall, and it's live at the Village West. And it's a time machine. Great recording, but I mean, spectacular music, and you're there. You're in the club, and yeah, these it's nonstop brilliance. This is definitely one to pick up. The label is Concord.
That's awesome. I love the Concord stuff from the 80s. It sounds so good.
Yeah.
I actually ordered that last week. I think I had posted a different record of theirs. Yeah.
Oh, good for you.
I think I posted a different record of theirs on Instagram a couple months ago, and you said buy that one. So, copy.
Me and my big mouth. There's a couple. This is on Inja, but Benny Wallace is a spectacular tenor player. You know his sound instantly when you hear it. You know, like Charles. You know, you hear Charles, it's like that's Charles Lloyd. I mean, these guys have so defined their voice. It's like their speaking voice almost, or singing voice, but they do it through the horn. And Benny has this great big, you know, sound that's, I hate to make comparisons, but his sonic texture always reminds me a bit of Coleman Hawkins. And so this is a record on Inja. It's just trio. It's called Big Jim's Tango, and it's Dave Holland and Elvin Jones and Benny. And this is, you can't buy this. You buy this and you're like, damn.
You would definitely check that one out.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then this is a later one on Blue Note called Border Town that is excellent, really excellent.
I'm not familiar with Benny Wallace. I'll have to check that out for sure.
He's we've done a bunch of records together. We did some records on Inja. I didn't pull ones I was involved with just because, you know, looking for stuff that I wasn't part of.
Right.
But I highly recommend these.
So speaking of Inja, so what was your role there at Inja?
Well, I just produced these Benny Wallace records, and there's a bunch. I'm bad with titles, but Someone to Watch Over Me is a great one. That's in fact, I really recommend that. That's Kenny Barron and Eddie Gomez and Benny. So just trio.
Awesome.
Really, really good. But any of them, you can't really go wrong. You'll I'll just warn you, once you get onto him, as this happened with a lot of musicians, they play with Benny and they become like evangelical, you know. And so I'll warn you guys, you go down the Benny Wallace rabbit hole, you may not come out.
That sounds great.
You can blame me.
I've probably gone down like a couple of guys, Phil Woods and Gato Barbieri. I've gone rabbit holes in those two guys.
Yeah, and we also have been looking at Woody Shaw a lot.
Oh man, yeah, Woody. So a dear friend of mine that I was in school with from Nebraska, the drummer Victor Lewis, played with Woody for years, and he's on that record, The Moon Train, and which is on Muse.
Yeah.
And then this one, Love Dance, which is on Muse. It's a great band. Victor's on this as well. But I used to when I go to New York or when they would come out here, I'd always go see Woody, and then got to hang with those guys usually because of Victor. Victor would stay with me, and that was exciting.
I bet. That's amazing.
Yeah, that guy, crazy. Just amazing players. Amazing player.
Okay.
Do you have any other records you want to show us?
What time do we have? Yeah, so I'll go quick. So this one, now this is self-serving totally, but it's one of my favorite pieces of music of all time. And you'll see it in the Tone Poet series next year.
Oh, awesome.
Wayne Shorter, Odyssey of Iska. And this year, Schizophrenia, you're going to be seeing that. But next year, you'll see this. And it just like, it's really, that second side of this is just one of my favorite pieces of music of all time. It's, it's like a double band kind of. There's two bass players and two drummers. And it's Wayne's writing is spectacular, and the playing and the communication that's going on between everyone. It's not like, when I say it's got two bands, it's not like just flat out bunch of blowing. There's lots of space in there too. And like self-serving to show it, but I can't help it. Sorry.
No, that's awesome. Thanks for letting us know.
I almost bought this one at a local store, but the cover was beat up. I passed on it, so good to know.
Yeah, good. Well, that's an interesting thing too. Like Felipe buys a lot of OGs, but like for me, I don't pick up that many Blue Notes and like at the record store, so I'm just waiting for y'all to release them. Y'all are putting out like 50 records a year now.
Yeah,
the Tone Poets and the Classic series, and it's like, why am I going to spend $60-$70 on some 70s pressing when I can just wait and get a brand new one, in the next several years probably?
It's funny. This is heresy to some, but I've got tons and tons of OGs, and since I'm the original buyer, they're like, man, I always took care of my records and had good systems to play it on. They're mint, they're not like trying to find some old used one. They're mint. However, once we master them and we I've got test pressings, I put them away, and it's great to have them, but I never play them again.
Wow.
I just, I've heard the master tape, and when you hear that, it like forever changes what you expect.
Mm-hmm.
For me, anyway. Mm-hmm. And when I put the originals on, I admire what Rudy did, but I also hear all the things he had to do that he didn't want to do. It's not like people hold those up as like, well, that's the way they should sound, which is cool. But there's all kinds of compromises he had to do to get those things to play. I've talked about this many times, but to get those things to play on the systems of that time. And we don't have to do that. So occasionally you run into a situation where someone has a turntable that's, a Krausley or something that's not very good, and they won't be able to deal with what we're doing because they're dynamic. We don't compress at all. But yeah, it basically, I want to hear that master tape from then on, because that will floor anybody that hears it.
Oh,
and the records, they basically give you that sound. I'm not saying they're as good as the master, but they're pretty darn close.
Wow.
They're pretty close.
Some of those Pacific jazz titles you've put out are some of the best sounding records in my collection.
Yeah. You're gonna like what's coming. There's some spectacular titles that are coming, and musically, sonically, every way.
Speaking of that, the picture of Heath that so many people had a problem with, right?
Yeah.
Once we all tuned our turntables, it played beautifully and perfectly.
Yeah.
There was like one spot where it was jumping in there, and then I got online like, yeah, your cartridge isn't set up correctly, so fix it. I did, and it was perfect and just beautiful and amazing.
I mean, most people had no problem, and this I understand it. There's someone has an issue. You hear about the problems. I mean, people, if they're upset about something, they tend to post. People that are happy with things, sometimes they post, often they don't.
Exactly.
But I would hear from people like, all my other records play great. Why do I shouldn't have to do this for this one? And I'd say, well, but here's the thing. If you set it up and you can play this one, your other records are going to sound better because you've set up your whole system better. It's not that you have to do it for just this one, but you'll find your other stuff is going to sound better too.
Yeah, and that record sounds fantastic.
Amazing.
Yeah, there'll be there's a lot more where that came from.
So I know we're coming up to time. Felipe, did you want to round out the questions?
So, Joe, since we did all this time journey so far, just to wrap up, looking ahead, looking next, what's going on now? New, current artists that are not like 80s or 90s, but things like even more recent. Do you listen to some of them? Do you like
Sure.
some?
Yeah.
Like, who would you recommend?
Well, gosh, on Blue Note, we've got like some brilliant artists. Artemis is a band that's it's all these brilliant women who are, each one of them is a leader, has records as a leader. I saw them a few months ago in La Jolla, and first time I'd seen them, and man, they blew me away. They are so good. I mean, and there's a new one coming out shortly from them, but based on what I heard, highly recommend. I like the previous record as well. I like what they do. Emmanuel Wilkins, brilliant player. I like that. There's I can't Bill Evans. Bill Frisell is not a new artist, so but he's on Blue Note, which I love. Julian Lage, another guitar player that's got some great stuff. Just put out an EP that's really, really excellent. It's, I think, 2 tracks on each side, or maybe 3, I'm not sure. It's a long EP. When I saw EP, I was like, "This is going to be 15 minutes," but it's a long EP, but it's really, really good. So Frizell's on it as well, and they're mostly playing acoustic. They pick up electric once or twice on this thing, but mostly it's acoustic. Really, really good. Oh, and we signed Michelle in Ducacello, and she's got a new one coming that's really great. I think it's next month, or maybe it's in June, but I've heard bits of it, and very excited about that.
Awesome.
And Charles, of course, who's anything but a new artist. You know what's amazing, and I was reminded again during these sessions, it's not like, hey, he's 85. Isn't it great that he can still kind of play his horn? No. Charles is playing top of his game. He's and for wind players, you don't run into that very often. It's hard to do. Trumpet players as well. You don't. It's physically the effort it takes. There comes a time when most people put that down. Sonny had to do it. Sonny Wayne. Of course, Wayne was ill, but had to do that. But Charles, man, his tone is beautiful, and he just, I keep thinking, man, I'd like to be as together as he is at 85. Don't know if that'll happen. There was the brown acid at Woodstock that might get in my way, but no, he's fantastic.
One new record I think we all picked it up, but the Kendrick Scott Corridors.
Yeah,
that's such a killer record.
Really,
and then Walter Smith III just put Return.
I was just going to mention Walter Smith III. Is that great or what?
Yeah.
Such a cool record.
Yeah, we're you know, we talked about, we love the 50s and 60s stuff. We're getting in the 70s and 80s. We're trying to also consciously buy new records and learn new things for people that are putting out jets right now.
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind
important.
of part of what we should be doing to keep the music, you know, alive and keep things going, I guess.
Well, and consider this, you know, when those records from Blue Note and Pacific and Riverside and all, you know, when those were coming out in the 50s, they didn't really sell much.
Mm.
You know, they were often, I mean, I don't even know how Alfred and Francis kept that going sometimes, but it wasn't on huge sales numbers.
Right.
So I tell people, consider these new ones. If you could fast forward 30 years, might very well be that these records, you know,
New classics.
they live on in ways that, you know, just like Herbie Nichols would blow his mind if he could somehow come back to life and see what's happening. These guys, you might find that the cycle continues.
Mm-hmm.
As time passes, these albums grow in stature.
That's awesome. I agree.
Yeah, always got to keep tabs on. That's the nature of the music, right? It's not a dead genre. It's a very much a living, breathing genre.
Absolutely.
So, Joe, I know we're coming up on time. We cannot thank you enough for coming and hanging out with us. This went by too quick.
A lot of fun, guys.
Okay, we'll give a part 2, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
You are welcome back anytime, and we
Okay.
will, you know, we will reach out in the future for sure.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Had a great time. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank
You
you.
guys are out there putting stuff up every day, which is the way to do it.
Thanks, Joe.
That's okay. Thank you so much. Thanks for your time. Thanks for coming.
Take care. All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
See you.